There were two reports that were carried out in the 19th century. One was in the 1850s, the other one was in the 1860s. It was a report on the slaves in the New World. The Yoruba people accounted for about 9% of all the slaves that were taken. And then the question they posed, you know what? Today's topic, we'll get there. Let me read this thing so that way I don't want to answer, I don't want to give an answer that will not be full. So give me a second, let me open that book. Essentially what it was about, it was in the 19th century, it was mid-19th century, and the issue was, they looked at the slaves, right? Yoruba people accounted for about 9%. Is this 9? Is it 9? Yeah, 9%. There were more Igbo slaves than Yoruba slaves, right? But they discovered that the influence of the Yoruba, their descendants in the New World, their influence outweighs was not commensurate with their numbers. So they started asking questions. You know what? Let me read something to you. Since we're asking this thing, although I didn't plan to go into this, but let me find that book. Just give me a second. I found it. What time is it for? I think we might as well answer some of those questions now. We'll go back to our Awolowo in a bit, but I think it's important to make some of these things clear because we don't know enough about this. So let's start with the 9% I mentioned earlier. So it doesn't look like I'm just talking. I want to read something. It's from A History of the Yoruba People by Stephen Banji Akintoye. The total number of Yoruba taken to the Americas as slaves, from the first in about the late 16th century to the last ones in about 1867, has been estimated to be about 1.12 million, representing a little less than 9% of all Africans taken to the Americas as slaves during the 3 centuries of trade. Of this number, nearly 80% were taken away in the century between 1750 and 1850. I just want to put that out there. So I'm trying to tell you where I found what I'm saying. Okay. Now the part I really want to tell you about, it's something from David Eltis. There are two people. Let me see if I can find the other person. Louis Antoine. That one was in 1858. So they did this research in the mid-19th century. Let me read to you. It says here, okay. Of the contributions of the cultural heritage of the Yoruba people to these processes, what processes? Let me go back a little. But as most studies of the African diaspora would confirm, every such creating, inventing, and forging was informed by the African cultural heritages that the slaves had brought with them. Thus were produced the many variations of African American cultures or Creole cultures, now existing as very significant contributions to the civilization of the New World. Of the contributions of the cultural heritage of the Yoruba people to these processes, a fair amount is known today, and the overall assessment seems to be that the cultural impact of the Yoruba people on the evolution of African American or Creole cultures was greater than the numbers of the Yoruba slaves could justify. In a recent study, David Eltis writes, within coerced African migration, that's among the slaves, the Yoruba were among the latest to arrive, but were neither the most numerous nor the least scattered over the Americas. I want to read something. It's a comparison between the Yoruba and the Igbo as far as what happened in the New Americas, in the New World is concerned. However, why it's important is that it goes back to culture, it goes back to history, it goes back to origin. So please stay with me. It won't be a very long read, but you like it. So it says, within coerced African migration, the Yoruba were among the latest to arrive, but were neither the most numerous, nor the least scattered over the Americas. In other words, we are concentrated in one place. We're not, we're in some places, not in one place, but we're not like Fonkato and Toku. So the question is, if we're not as dispersed, as scattered all over the place, how come our culture, has been able to influence people away from even where the slaves were of Yoruba origin, where they were concentrated? How did your culture travel that far? But so let's get into this. Reasonably precise estimates for other groups will eventually become available, but it is probable that Igbo and some West Central African peoples were larger and more heavily concentrated than the Yoruba, the Igbo in parts of the British Caribbean, and some of what have been termed Congo groups in southeast Brazil. Yet, the impact of the Yoruba speakers on Creole societies, Creole basically means mulatto, it means be an outcast, like basically a mix of different things, of two things. So I want both, toward a new society. So they say, it says here, yet the impact of the Yoruba speakers on Creole societies that emerged in many parts of the Americas appears to modern scholars to have been strong, and in the light of the evidence presented here, out of proportion to the relative size of Yoruba arrivals. In other words, the influence that we have is out of proportion when you consider our numbers. But the question is not, let's celebrate that. No, the question is why. That's why I think he answers it, and we'll go to Louis Antoine, because he really went deep into it. So stay with me. It goes, let me read this one. It says, in comparison, that is, with other African groups, the Yorubas contributed considerably more to Creole or African American civilization in oral traditions, especially as expressed in songs, religious rituals, stories, proverbs, and so on, as well as in various modes of family and societal structures. The main explanation for this is to be found in the strength of, listen, if you're Yoruba, please listen, you've got to be proud. You know the kind of pride I'm saying. It says, the main explanation for this is to be found in the strength of the civilization from which the Yoruba of the New World were extracted and taken away into slavery. In other words, I'll continue reading, but let me quickly say something. There's a quote by Archbishop Benson Idahosa. He said, a lizard in Nigeria cannot become an alligator in America. If he didn't die, he didn't die. What the Yoruba had in terms of the civilization at home was what they carried with them. That is why, even though they were not as many, even though they were not as scattered, they had more enduring legacy than other groups, because those other groups did not have that kind of civilization where they were coming from. There's no complex structure in Igbo society. None. Guys, there is no, I didn't say was, there is no complex structure. Do you know what it means to have a king? You guys think it's about somebody carrying a crown, say, can't be you. It's that, but it's that and more.